we felt like we went a little bit on the highbrow, so we tried to dumb down the program just a little bit. So we're going to start on an intellectual bent, and we're going to bring on our principal, our esteemed principal, Dr. Daniel McMahon, who will at least give us the impression that we are intellectual. And after, actually, we're going to call this segment the Croppy Boy. And right after that, Patrick McGroarty, class of '06, is going to come up here and sing the Croppy Boy.
It only seems highbrow to Tom. So, I'm going to read a poem by Seamus Heaney called Requiem for the Croppies. And I'm going to talk a little bit about it, and then I'm going to read it again. And I have some copies. Usually I'm not used to people actually paying attention to me. I teach high school, right? So I don't know, I'm sure I did not make enough copies, but in any case you can follow along so you can sort of see why the pauses in it, things are where they are. So this is Seamus Heaney's Requiem for the Croppies. The pockets of our greatcoats full of barley. No kitchens on the run, no striking camp. We move quick and sudden in our own country. The priests lay behind ditches with the tramp. A people hardly marching, on the hike. We found new tactics happening each day. We cut through reins and rider with the pike, and stampede cattle into infantry, then retreat through hedges where cavalry must be thrown, until, on Vinegar Hill, the final conclave. Terraced thousands died, shaking scythes at cannon. The hillside blushed, soaked in our broken wave. They buried us without shroud or coffin, and in August, the barley grew up out of our grave. It's an extraordinary poem. So, Heaney won the Nobel Prize in 1995. And he wrote this poem in 1966 under very specific conditions. It was a time when many Irish poets and artists were trying to find a way to commemorate the 50th anniversary of the 1916 Rising. So what Heaney did that is different, right, was he found the origins of the 1916 Rising in 1798. The rebellion of 1798 was born of revolutionary Republican ideas which had swept America in 1776, France in 1789, and were sweeping England. That revolution of 1798 was savagely put down. This poem is a sonnet, right? It's 14 line long, which is traditional for a sonnet. But it contains a rough and imperfect rhyme scheme. For example, barley and country are not a perfect rhyme. Day and infantry do not quite make it. Throne, cannon, and coffin pick up only the last consonant sound N. They do not rhyme in a true fashion. Lots of lines do contain internal sound connections though. Until and hill, forced into a pause. Died and scythes, stampede and retreat in adjacent lines to each other. Not all of the lines have 10 syllables, which is traditional in a sonnet. Some run over. But I think that this roughness matches the voice of the unlettered narrator who speaks the poem in first person plural. Notice the amount of times he says our and we. He's one of the Croppy Boys. The poem is filled with pauses and stops. There are 7 ellipses in the poem. There are 4 commas. There are 7 periods. There's a colon. There are 19 full stops in a 14-line poem. It contains beautiful but horrible images. A hillside so blood-drenched that it blushes. But it also contains a birth of new life out of death, as the actual bodies of the Croppies are the nourishment for the barley that grows from them. The Croppy Boys were called this because they wore their hair cropped, in opposition to the foppish long hair aristocracy that was favored at the time. They did in fact carry barley in their pockets. It made them more mobile. They never had to set up a kitchen. They never had to strike camp. On June 21st, 1798 at Vinegar Hill, they were cornered, and many were slaughtered by artillery bombardment. They increasingly backed up the hill, creating that terraced look. They made 2 futile attempts to break the British line. The British buried the bodies in mass shallow graves, and almost all were killed by artillery. But the seeds of rebellion were sown, and they bore fruit in 1913, 1916, 1969, wherever the revolutionary spirit could not be killed. There's an interesting Catholicism that runs through the poem too. Choices of the use of the words requiem, right? Not distinctively Catholic, but overwhelmingly Catholic. Conclave, right? Any gathering, but very specifically, religious gathering that we're fortunate to witness now. And the reference to the priest, right? And actually, a priest did lead the part of the Wexford Rebellion. So, I'm going to read it again with all the full pauses built into the poem. Okay? Requiem for the Croppies. The pockets of our greatcoats full of barley. No kitchens on the run. No striking camp. We moved quick and sudden in our own country. The priest lay behind ditches with the tramp. A people hardly marching. On the hike. We found new tactics happening each day. We cut through reins and rider with the pike and stampede cattle into infantry. Then retreat through hedges where cavalry must be thrown. Until, on Vinegar Hill, the final conclave. Terraced thousands died, shaking scythes at cannon. The hillside blushed, soaked in our broken wave. They buried us without shroud or coffin. And in August, the barley grew up out of our grave. It's really extraordinary. Patrick?
Was early, all in the spring. The birds did whistle and sweetly sing, changing their notes from tree to tree. And the song they sang was Old Ireland Free. 'Twas early in the night. The yeoman cavalry gave me a fright. The yeoman cavalry was my downfall, and I was taken by Lord Cornwall. As I was going up Wexford Street, my own first cousin I chanced to meet. My own first cousin did me betray, and for one bare guinea swore my life away. And as I mounted the platform high, my aged father was standing by. My aged father did me deny, and the name he gave me was the Croppy Boy. It was in Dungannon this young man died, and in Dungannon his body lies. And you good people that do pass by, oh, shed a tear for the Croppy